Today on Health and Faith, we're talking about something that so many Christian women quietly struggle with: burnout, emotional exhaustion, and the pressure of always having to be the strong one. I've got a fantastic guest today, Lori Owens, and we are talking faith, fatigue, and fighting Christian burnout. Are you ready to feel clear-minded, energized, and strong in your body so you can serve God with even greater joy and purpose? Welcome, friend. I'm Laura Hargrave, Master Certified Nutritionist, best-selling author, and health coach with over 20 years of experience helping believers like you live vibrant, spirit-led lives through simple and lasting health habits that truly work. In this podcast, I weave together biblical wisdom, proven science, and a less is more approach to help you burn fat naturally, boost your energy and focus, and restore your body as God's living temple. So grab your green tea or your walking shoes and let's grow in wisdom and wellness that will bless you for years to come. Welcome to Health and Faith. Before we get into today's episode, if you're new to Health and Faith, then welcome. Really lovely to have you here. And if you're returning, then welcome back. If you haven't already, do head on over to healthinfaith.com because there's lots of free and paid resources to help you in your Christian journey of health. We are called to be good stewards of our health, and I'm sure that you want to live this one life before eternity well. You want energy, vitality, you want to be at your slimmest weight. And I've got 25 years experience as a health coach, as a nutritionist, and previously working in standard medicine, and I saw that didn't work. That doesn't produce natural, good, vibrant health. So I've learned the ways that can and do, and I've got some resources to help you. So go and download my free 4-step metabolic health guide for Christians, and that's a great place to start. My guest today is Lori Owens. Lori is the host of Practical Solutions for PTSD, and she helps people who are struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD, trauma, to take practical steps towards healing and hope. She's a former US Army civilian with over 16 years of service, and she worked in high-stress deployment to Kuwait, and so Lori knows firsthand what it's like to face intense pressure and the knock-on effects of that. After experiencing her own struggles with PTSD, anxiety and depression, she turned her journey of healing into a mission, and she now teaches resilience, positive psychology and faith-based strategies to help others to move forwards. So through her podcast coaching and speaking, Lori equips people, women, men and groups with real-world tools to navigate emotional challenges, rediscover purpose, and step out of darkness one practical step at a time. So I'm really glad to have Lori on, and I hope that you're blessed by this interview. Okay, so we've got Lori Owens. I'm so excited to have Lori on the podcast today. So before we kind of dive into questions and we get into our topic today, Lori, can you just tell us a bit about your background? You've got a really interesting story, so tell us your background and the work you do.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Laura. The first time I listened to your podcast back in the early days of P2P, I'm like, this is a lady I want to connect with. So I have been a fan of yours for a while, and so I'm very honored to be on your podcast. Thank you so much for opening that door for me. My background, I served with the Army as a civilian for the United States Army for 16 years, and early in my career, I deployed to Kuwait for a couple of years, and I was the project lead for a multinational, very complex project that was high op-tempo, high stress, and took a lot of energy, emotional, mental, physical, to be able to do this. And I was in Kuwait for almost 2 years supporting that project. And I came back, I didn't know it at the time, it took me years to figure this out, but I came back with extreme burnout and PTSD and some health issues that resulted from chronic stress and a lot of other things. So I sat down, like shortly after I came back, about 5 months later, I sat down with the doctor and I was like, okay, I need to get some blood work done and I need your help because I want to be able to lose the weight I gained while I was operating under stress, because that happens. And he looked me dead in the eye and he's like, Lori, you need to focus on healing from the inside out before you focus on weight loss.
Mm.
And that was the first, I'm like, what? I never heard of that before. So thus began my very long journey of figuring out, this is where I learned the connection between nutrition and mental health was in this journey. I started figuring out, learning about wellness to try to fix myself, to get myself put back together, which ended up leading to resilience. I had never heard of it before, but I ended up becoming a master resilience trainer for the Army. And I worked with them in that for 7 years and just loved it. Very passionate about it, really enjoyed it. And then almost exactly just over a year ago, the Lord called me out of that job into starting a podcast. And so now my podcast is Practical Solutions for PTSD. I help people develop coping strategies to deal with anxiety, depression, chronic stress, to overcome things like loneliness, isolation, guilt, and to be able to handle that, to combat that, and come back from those places. Ideally to prevent it in the first place. But if you've been there, to be able to come back and know that even though you've come through a really difficult time, a dark time, there is joy in the morning. God does bring us through that and restores us again. And I have found my joy again. For a long time, I felt like I lost it, but God's restored that, and I have a life of meaning and joy and purpose, and I want to be able to help others find that same thing.
Amazing. Amazing. That's really powerful. And isn't that interesting that the doctor said that to you? They have the insight to see that, you needed
Yes.
healing from the inside. That was really wise. So, can I ask them, what did that look like for you to start with, to start that healing from the inside journey?
And one of the first things he had me do was change my diet, which at that point I would have told you I ate fairly healthy. I had no clue that I really didn't.
Mm.
I mean, I wasn't like super, super bad. I didn't live on like TV dinners or a lot of packaged foods, but it just wasn't super healthy. And so he started working with me on changing my diet. And at first, it was very overwhelming, but then he would emphasize, taking one step at a time, just alter this and change that, and just gradually until it became an integrated part of my health. And there's things I do today that I don't even think about it anymore because it's such a habit for me and so ingrained. So nutrition played a big part in that. There was also some supplements that I took to try to help counter the damage that had been done to my body due to stress and anxiety. And I mean, I've done enough cleanses you shake a stick at, just trying because my body doesn't handle environmental toxins very well.
Okay.
And I was exposed to a high degree of them in Kuwait. And so when I came back, it was trying to get those toxins out of my body because it was affecting a lot of stuff. So working through some of those, it's actually, I was doing an environmental cleanse when I started having all these emotional issues. And I was talking to another doctor and she says, Laura, you've got to get counseling before you'll ever lose weight because they're tied together. The trauma that I had been dealing with was affecting my health.
Yeah.
And the link is just so clear there. But I mean, I was working on healing my gut. I did a lot of gut healing stuff, which is really, really important. I found out later that there's a direct tie between the gut and the brain and how critically important it is that you have good gut health if you're going to have good brain health.
Mm.
And so going through a lot of that, and there's still pieces I'm working on. This is not a complete picture, but God has brought me so far. I mean, there was times when literally I could not walk 500 feet without collapsing and paying for it for 3 days. I just would be so tired. And I mean, I stood in the backyard. I have two dogs, and I was cleaning up after them for like 20 minutes in the spring, and was sick for 3 days. So God's brought me so far.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of this was tied to nutrition and gut healing to be able to heal the brain and the body.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really helpful to hear. So a number of things I'm picking out of this. So small steps, one step at a time, and
Oh, absolutely.
nothing too major, too drastic all at once. And yeah, that gut connection, isn't that true that especially when there's toxic overload. I see that a lot with my clients if I work with clients with mold or parasites
Yeah.
or Lyme or anything like that. It's that we have to really focus in on the gut. So that's, yeah, again, really wise that that was one of the first places you started. Something you said earlier on as well, I want to circle back on this idea of resilience. That's a real interest of mine as well. And since 2020, with the whole COVID thing and lockdowns and all of that, which was, that was a trauma for so many people, wasn't it? And the Lord spoke to me on resilience, and I was aware that I felt quite unresilient in a way. So that's when I started cold water swimming, just to build some physical resilience to start with. So what can you define for us? How would you define resilience, and why is it important? And what are some things we can do as Christians, maybe struggling with some of the things that you have experienced? What's the deal with that?
So resilience is the capacity to be able to come back and thrive after hard times,
Yeah.
or even in the midst of them, to be able to develop some skills that you can use to effectively deal with the stress so that it's not shutting you down. So I actually just recorded two episodes for my podcast for next week that talks about being present in your life without being overwhelmed with it. So this is, trying to find those coping strategies that help you manage the stress, that drawing boundaries, super, super critical. Creating developing those mental and emotional strengths to help you combat the trials and tribulations that we all face. Everybody faces difficult times. Everybody has a story. How you come back from that and how you operate in the midst of it really comes down to a lot of those mental and emotional skills that you develop. And also, one of the big things for me, and one thing I teach my clients, is to lean into who God created you to be. God gave us a set of character strengths that we're born with, and some of them you can go on to develop. You have personality traits and love languages, et cetera. If you lean into that and develop them,
Mm.
they actually become your superpower because this is who God created you to be. So if you can refine that and find your tools in there and what you can lean into to help combat the difficulties that you're facing and use those character strengths, use those personality traits to help you to be able to manage that, it becomes really, really important in keeping it from overwhelming you and developing that mental and emotional strength to be able to do that.
Mm. I really like that. That's that's lovely to hear, really reassuring, because oftentimes we can think that we're flawed, or these wonderful qualities that make us individuals in the way that the Lord's
Yes.
fashioned us. We think that they're a hindrance and we need to, I need to be more like them or more like the next person, when actually, so leaning into those things.
I
Interesting.
can remember when I was in Kuwait one time, I actually got into a really big argument with my battle buddy, and it was over what I perceived, and he did too,
Mm.
as character flaws. And after we had our argument, I went for this long walk and I was crying and praying. I'm like, God, could I just be different? Because I'm just so flawed in this way.
Mm.
And God let me cry it out, which he often does. He's like, it's okay. You can be emotional. You don't have to hide this from the Lord. He can handle it.
Mm.
So I get done with crying it out, and the Lord's like, I like you just the way you are. I
Oh.
created you that way because those very characteristics that you're complaining about right now are the same things that make you willing to step out on faith when nobody else would. It's
Mm.
that jumping into things without having all your ducks in a row.
Mhm.
But it's the same characteristic that would make me more willing to step out on faith. And, like God says, go, okay, then he'll work it out in the way. It just doesn't matter. I don't have to have all my ducks in a row. And he's like, that makes me smile. And I'm like, what?
Oh.
So that was the first window that God showed me. And then he began to bring this out in the years, like when I took my resilience training, and they focus on those character strengths and learning how to develop them, understanding like you can overdo them and they can become a weakness. But if you learn to balance that and how to refine them and use them in the proper context, they can actually help you to come through the dark times and the difficult times when you lean into that. It's what God already gave you. And
Mm.
God created you this beautiful person. on purpose. There's only one Laura in the entire world. There's not another one. You know, if we pretend like we're the person to the left or right, like I want to be like them or, you know, they do this better, we're leaving an empty spot of where God wants us to fulfill our purpose and our mission.
Yes.
So learning to develop that and to lean into that was when I began to realize, hey, you know, God didn't make a mistake when he made me. He made me this way on purpose. And so how can I use it to help me be better? And I mean, just a really simple example, one of my character strengths is creativity. And so when I'm dealing with depression or anxiety, one of the things when I couldn't handle anything else, I would start adult coloring because it would help me to be able to pull myself out of that and to ground me in the moment. So that's just one very simple example. There's a lot of them out there. But you can lean into your character strengths and figure out, I actually have a series going on my podcast right now talking about this, but you can lean into those and figure out how can I use this specific strength to help me with anxiety, to help me with depression, you know, to help me break free from seasonal depression, whatever that could be.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, so a lot of my clients, I work with a lot of people who would class themselves. So one of my clients said to me last week, and it really struck me. She said, I'm tired of being the strong one. The strong one is struggling. She's the matriarch in her family. She has caring responsibilities for her husband. She's a grandmother. She's got a lot of responsibilities with the grandchildren. She's on, I don't know, 4 or 5 different rotas and in church. And that's and she's struggling with health issues, aches, pains, all sorts of things going on. And when she said that to me, the strong one is struggling, I thought that's just that's just spoken out what so many of the people I work with, the situation they're in, whether they're church leaders or other ministry leaders or grandparents or business owners, they come to me often when they're still in that position of needing to be strong and feeling a bit stuck in, well, and that's clearly their strength, being the strong one. What advice would you give to them when they're in that place and they feel like they can't just say, well, I'm just gonna exit my responsibilities for a few weeks or few months and, get better? Where's a good place to start?
First is to know that it's okay to feel that way. Sometimes we get to, I mean, I was there as part of what brought me to where I am now was
Mhm.
especially when I was in Kuwait, feeling like I had to hold it all together because there was no one else to pick up the baton. Um, that doesn't usually come on quickly. It's usually a gradual process. And then you get to the place like, I cannot take another step. I'm so tired. I can't do this. It's like a bone deep tired way down inside.
Yeah.
Um, it's not a sign of weakness. It's not like you may feel like you're falling apart. But it's okay. It's okay to feel this way. So let go of any kind of guilt you're holding on to. This is your body signaling you that you have maxed out and it's time to start drawing some boundaries. And the sooner the better. But if you can start drawing some boundaries and start pulling back a little bit and counterintuitively doing less will actually help you do more in the long run.
Mhm.
And so something that would actually fit with your audience potentially, there's a book called from Stu Middleton. He's a professional runner.
Yeah.
He wrote this book called Slow Burn. And it's very counterintuitive, but he actually trains people to run marathons. And he has found that if you have a slower pace, you come out better in the long run. And he tells a story when he and a bunch of other professional runners were doing like this 5-day race or something like that, where you just run around the clock with short breaks.
Mhm.
And he started out doing what he preached, running slow, which was very counter even for him in this situation. He wanted to run fast because his competitors were passing him up, but he kept his slow pace. And by day 3, he started catching up and then he started passing them and he eventually won the race because he paced himself. He
Wow.
drew boundaries around his energy and learning to draw boundaries is so, so critical because it's protecting the most important resource you have, and that is yourself.
Mm.
If you learn to manage your energy, it goes along a lot further and putting it in places where it needs to be and learning to take care of yourself. So often when we talk about, self-care or self-maintenance, people automatically feel, the self in there, they think it's selfish to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
But this is a very important way of being able to take care of others because if you're broken, you're not going to be able to serve.
Hmm.
So starting small, you do need to start small. Don't overwhelm yourself because it can be overwhelming at first. But if you can just, well, one of my favorite things is the serenity prayer. I love the serenity prayer. It's
Mm.
like, God grant me the wisdom to change the things I can, to accept the things I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
So understanding that not everything is your responsibility and being able to let go of some of that stuff that isn't your responsibility to control the controllables. What can I control? What is my responsibility to control? And what can I let go and let other people manage? And then drawing some really simple boundaries to protect yourself and to give yourself time just to rest and relax and rejuvenate, to be able to come back. That's really, really important, especially if you're in a position of responsibility. And I
Hmm.
often tell people the more people depend on you to be there for them, the more critical it is that you're taking care of yourself.
Oh, wow. That's really counterintuitive, isn't it? I'd
It
imagine.
is.
Oh,
But if you think about it, like I used to work for in the Army, as I mentioned, it was a logistics and maintenance command. Like we took care of equipment. So
yeah.
like if you look at equipment, like you're taking your car out on a holiday and you've got your family, your most precious treasures in the car with you. What's the first thing you're going to do before you take the trip? You're going to
Mm.
take the car into the shop and make sure the oil's changed, make sure it's running well, make sure everything is operational because you don't want to get out on this long road trip and get stranded somewhere or the car break down, put your family in danger, etc. So it's the same thing with yourself. If you are being depended on to provide care, assistance, responsibility to others, it is so important you're taking care of yourself, or you're not going to be there to be able to take care of others.
Wow, I love that. That's a really powerful reframe, isn't it? Wow.
Yes. And it's something we often struggle, especially for people that are intuitive caregivers
Mm.
or the ones that are the strong ones, the ones that are the responsible ones.
Yeah.
Understand that you have to take care of yourself. You have to draw boundaries around that to be able to be there for other people.
Mm. Okay. So, do you have any easy, practical places to start in terms of drawing boundaries?
Um, Two things. I have a three-step process that I can walk you through.
Mm. Yeah.
And then the other one is to identify your values because you're better at keeping boundaries if they're tied to something that you value.
Okay.
So the first thing you want to do to be able to stay connected with your life without being overwhelmed is to dial back some of that pressure. So if you can look at just one responsibility that you have and just start small. You don't have to rewrite your entire life operational manual and one setting. Start with one thing, like get one win, organize that one drawer.
Mhm.
So we're going to look at changing one thing. So look at one responsibility and ask, is this still mine to carry? Can someone else handle this? Is this mine to carry? Use that serenity prayer as a framework if you want to.
Yeah.
Is this something I can change? Is this something I need to change? Or is this someone else's responsibility? Can I turn this over to someone else and let this pressure go?
Yeah.
So and then just look at one. If you're a big picture person like I am, or you have a lot of responsibility, sometimes you can be overwhelmed by the mass. Like I can't, it's just so much. I get so overwhelmed. So put the blinders on and look at just one responsibility and take it there. And then it's also important. The second one is to have one moment of gratitude. Because when you're overwhelmed, it's easy to get locked into this negative mindset.
Yeah.
Like everything is awful, everything makes me tired, everything is hard. And we're not ignoring the hard. We're not trying to suppress that or push it down or ignore it, but you're wanting to bring alongside it something good. So a both and mindset. You
Mhm.
have both the hard and we have something good. And this helps keep you grounded and helps keep your mind open to new opportunities and to the good that kind of balances the anxiety is thinking of one thing that's good. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be a really small thing. Like I had an amazing cup of tea this morning. Yay. So being able, like just something it was the flavors were balanced really well. It was nice and hot. It was just wonderful. So it could be really small like that, just a small thing. It could be a larger thing, but just one moment of gratitude can help ground you. The third one is one forward step. So we can get overwhelmed by all the stuff we have to do. And I still have to do this myself because I am a big picture person. I can see where I want to go 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get there, but I know where I want to be. And
Yeah.
I can get very overwhelmed with my very long to-do list and it just shuts down. I can't see anything. So You look at just one thing you can do to move yourself forward to reach your goal. And so one question I often ask myself is, what's one thing I did today that moved me closer to where I want to be? And it could just be one thing. So, like for the people that you're working with, maybe their goal is to eat 7 servings of vegetables a day. And right now they're only eating two. Going from 2 to 7 can be overwhelming.
Mm.
It's a little thing, but it can still be overwhelming. So instead of like, okay, I can't really handle the whole 7 vegetables a day thing, I can add 1 serving of vegetables. Maybe to a meal I don't have any vegetables in right now.
Mm.
So I can have 1 serving of vegetables, and that's all I'm going to target right now is that 1 serving. And then when I got that down, then I'll add another serving and just taking it 1 serving at a time instead of just jumping from 2 to 7.
Okay, okay. And just on a with that kind of reflection on the one thing that you've done to move that forward, do you do that kind of in the moment throughout the day or journal it at the end of the day? What have you found? Or is it just whatever works for anyone? Or
Sometimes if I'm feeling overwhelmed in the day, then I'll say, what is one thing I can do today
yeah.
that will help me to get where I may not be able to sit down and work for 8 hours because I just got too much on my plate or I feel too overwhelmed or I'm not feeling well, but I can do one thing, just one thing. Maybe it's just answering one email
Mm.
or, looking down and scheduling out the podcast for the week or loading social media to the page. I can do one thing that gets me closer to where I'm going. And that gets me started. And that may be all I do that day, but at the end of the day, I can say, hey, I did my one thing.
Yeah.
And I can be grateful. And if you want to journal it, you can, but that helps. It helps filter out the noise and gets you focused on moving forward because progress is progress, even if it's little tiny bitty progress, it's still
Yeah.
progress. It still gets you moving in the right direction.
I can see the power in that, and I think it could be so easy, and I'm can be like this. You know, the temptation is to feel, oh, too much. I'm just not going to do any of it, or zone
Mhm.
out, do something different. But there's power in that one or two, one, small things, but are moving the needle in the right direction. And in a day and age where people are addicted to quick dopamine hits,
Mhm.
that's a really good way of resetting our nervous system for lasting satisfaction of
Right.
dopamine hits from achievement rather than scrolling and zoning out and junk food and the rest of it. So
Yes.
great. That's really powerful. Thank you for that, Laurie. So, anything else you want to say on that? Anything you want to
The
add?
one thing I would add is if you can tie the boundaries that you set when you're setting boundaries for yourself, if you can tie that to values that you hold dear, you are more likely to keep them. And it becomes easier to keep them. Because one thing I heard this actually from a fellow podcaster. Every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is very, very true. When you think about it, I'm saying yes to volunteering at this, but that means I'm saying no to my child who needs me at home right now.
Mhm.
Or I'm saying yes to sponsoring this event at school, but I'm saying no to cooking dinner for my kids and family. So every time you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So if you figure out like your top 3 values, you don't want to go through all of them, that's fine. You can do 3 of your top ones and set your boundaries tied to those values. It becomes much easier. Like, yes, I value volunteering at this organization, but it's taking me away from my children tonight, so I'm going to have to say no
Mhm.
because I'm saying yes to something I value even more. And that makes that boundary setting a little easier to maintain and a
Yeah.
little clearer. So, and that can help with some of that boundary setting. And then following those 3 steps can help you with just that day-to-day pressure, like real life. This is life. This is how I get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. So tie the boundaries to your values. I can
Mhm.
see the importance in that because otherwise sometimes we can feel guilty for setting boundaries. They can feel arbitrary or a bit cold to say no to
Yep.
something that we all just want to say, yes, I'd love to do that and I'd love to help and I'd especially when you and I in business, imagine like me, Laurie, you get loads of just requests all of the time and you want to be of service, you want to help. And as Christians, we're told it's a really high calling to serve. And so it doesn't come naturally to us as Christians to say, do you know what? Actually, I can't do that. I can't make that. You're going to have to do that on your own, find someone else. So that's really powerful to tie it to those values. So, this is not me being selfish. It's not, it's not me being harsh. It's like that book, Good to Great, isn't it? You're saying no to the good to saying yes to the greater thing
Yes.
that is our calling, and to preserve that energy. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. So you run the podcast Practical Solutions for PTSD. So
Yes.
tell us, where can we find that, and where can we find out more about you, Laurie, and the work you do?
So my website is practicalsolutionsforptsd.com. Same name as the podcast. All the links that you will ever need are listed there.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of them, but you can also look for the podcast on any of your podcast platforms. It's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Audible. I mean, just anywhere you go, you're going to be able to find um, that podcast by that name. And the one link that is not on my website is my workshop, because that's a temporary thing. So that one's not on my website. But the workshop is Calm Emotional Overwhelm Workshop. It's just ceoworkshop.grwebsite.com
Hmm.
to sign up for that, which we'll be talking about dealing with calming that emotional overwhelm. I gave you a preview of that today, actually.
Oh,
um, but anyway, the rest of it you can just find on the website.
lovely. Well, thank you so much. That was really helpful. And yeah, amazing. Thanks so much for sharing with us, Laurie. Bless you.
Yes, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
So I hope you were blessed by that episode. Look forward to speaking to you again on the next episode. Don't forget to go to healthinfaith.com and download your free resources, and feel free to book a one-to-one metabolic breakthrough consultation with me as well. Those consults get booked up quickly. I've got a few openings left this month, so if you want to grab one, do that now. And I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode. God bless you. Bye for now. Thanks so much for listening today to Health and Faith, our podcast here for Christians, to equip you to live healthy in the unhealthy world that we live in. If you enjoyed the show and appreciate it, then do share it with a Christian friend. And would you take, literally it takes 20 seconds, just go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a review, a 5-star review. I read everyone, and I look forward to speaking to you again on the next episode.